Welcome back to Stories for Kids. Now we are reading Akbar and Birbal series. So this is the third episode for Akbar and Birbal. If you have not listened to the previous two episodes, please go and check. There are so many Akbar and Birbal stories in the last two episodes, and today I am going to read episode 3 of Akbar Birbal. So without wasting much time, let's start our first story, which is God Saves His Devotees. Though Akbar was a Muslim ruler, he respected all religions equally and was ever curious to know more about God. One day he asked Birbal, "Birbal, is it true that one of gods in Hindu mythology rushed to rescue an elephant who prayed to him for help?" Birbal said, "Yes, my lord. When Gajendra, the king of elephants, was grabbed by a crocodile who wanted to kill him, he prayed to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu answered his prayers and he came to Gajendra's rescue." Akbar said, "Why did God come to rescue Gajendra himself? He could have sent his servants. He has many servants, doesn't he?" Birbal said, "I shall answer these questions in a few days." The prince would often go for a walk in the evening with his servant. Birbal cleverly befriended the servant and asked him not to tell anyone that they were friends. Then he got a wax statue made, which looked exactly like Prince. One evening when the prince was sleeping, Birbal asked the servant to take the statue for a walk instead of the prince. The servant did as he was told. Soon after, the servant came running to Akbar saying, "Jahabana, come quickly, the prince has fallen into pond. He does not know how to swim." When Akbar heard this, he leaped from his throne at once and ran towards the pond. When he reached the pond, he jumped into it to rescue the prince. Akbar was very relieved when he did not find the prince in the pond. Instead, he found the statue which looked like the prince. Birbal was waiting for the emperor to come out of the water. Akbar asked Birbal, "What kind of joke is this?" Birbal said, "Jahabana, why did you jump into the pond yourself? You could have sent a servant to save the prince. You have many servants, don't you?" Akbar remembered the question about God he asked Birbal. Birbal continued, "God loves his devotees in the same way as you love your son. It is because of this love that he himself rushes to rescue them. The other day you inquired why Lord Vishnu himself went to rescue Gajendra from a crocodile. Now you have the answer." Akbar said, "No one could have explained it to me better. I understand now." The next story is Greater Than God. One day, Emperor Akbar had invited some close friends over for dinner. Birbal was also there. Many delicious dishes were served and the party enjoyed it very much. After dinner, the guests requested to be entertained. A famous storyteller was called. He began to tell funny stories. Akbar and his guests laughed heartily at the stories. Akbar was so happy with the storyteller that he offered the man a bag of gold coins. Indeed, the emperor loved to hear the stories, and this man was very good at telling stories. The man was very pleased at the emperor's gesture. He took the bag of gold from the emperor and bowed respectfully. Then he said, "You are the greatest king that ever was. In fact, you are greater than the God." No sooner the man said this, there was a silence in the court. The ministers thought, "Greater than God? How can a man be greater than God?" Akbar was very pleased to hear what the storyteller had said. Though he too knew that the storyteller had gone a little overboard with the praise. He found it very funny to see the surprised faces around him. He decided to have some fun. When the storyteller had left, the emperor turned around to his guests and ministers and asked, "Do you agree with what the man just said? Do you think I am greater than God?" The guests and the ministers remained quiet. They did not know what to say. Surely the emperor was not greater than God, but to say that would offend the emperor and he might punish them. Akbar kept teasing them. He said, "I am happy you think I am greater than God. Now tell me, why am I greater than God?" The guest and the ministers looked at each other. They were truly lost for words. Akbar looked at Birbal. He said, "Tell me, Birbal, why do you think I am greater than God?" Birbal said, "Jahapana, you can do something which God cannot. You can banish a wicked man from his kingdom. God cannot do so. Since he owns the universe, where could he send the man? So you are greater than the God." Akbar burst out laughing. Even he had not thought of such an answer. He said, "Dear Birbal, your wit has no match." The guest and the ministers heaved a sigh of relief. They took laughed at Birbal's answer. The next story is Unlucky Face. Once there lived a young man in Akbar's city. He had no friends, for people hated him. They make fun of him and throw stones at him whenever he was out in the street. Yusuf's life was miserable, for everyone thought that he was unlucky. People would say that a glance at Yusuf's face would bring bad luck to the person. Thus, even though Yusuf was hated, his story was famous far and wide. The rumors reached Akbar's ears. He wanted to test if what people said was true. He invited Yusuf to the court and spoke to him politely. But just then a messenger came running to the court and informed Akbar that the queen has taken seriously ill. The messenger said, "Jahapana, you are requested at the queen's chamber urgently. The queen has fainted and the physicians are unable to understand why." Akbar rushed to his queen. He sat by her bed all afternoon. When the queen was feeling better, again in the evening, Akbar returned to the court. Yusuf was still waiting for him. But on seeing Yusuf, Akbar got very angry. He roared, "So the rumors are true. You are indeed unlucky. You have made the queen ill." He ordered the prison guard to take Yusuf away. Poor Yusuf had no option. He wailed aloud and begged the guard to let him be free. The decision of the emperor was so unfair, but no one at the court dared to say anything in protest, for they feared the emperor. Suddenly, Birbal walked to where Yusuf was standing and whispered something in his ear. Yusuf bowed to the king and said, "Jahapana, I am ready to go to prison, but after you have answered my humble question. If the queen is ill because you saw my face, then is it not possible that I am being sent to prison because I saw your face?" Akbar realized his mistake. He let Yusuf go and granted him a bag of gold from the treasury. Once again, the people in the court praised Birbal's wisdom and intelligence. The next story is Birbal's cooking of khichdi. Akbar's city of Fatehpur Sikri would get very cold during winters. Once, the emperor announced that he would give 1,000 gold coins to anyone who would dare to stand all night in the cold lake just outside the royal palace. For many days, Akbar received no volunteers. Then one day, a poor Brahmin came to the court. The emperor was amazed when he saw the poor man. He was thin and sickly. The emperor asked, "You are so thin and sickly. Why do you want to take up this difficult challenge?" The Brahmin said, "My lord, I am a poor man. I have little children to feed. I need the money." Akbar agreed, and the Brahmin was led to the lake by two guards. The Brahmin took off his clothes, stepped into the water, and stood in the ice-cold water for the whole night as the guard watched him. The next morning, the guard brought the Brahmin back to the court. Akbar was amazed at how brave the Brahmin was. He asked, "How did you manage to stand in the cold water all night? Didn't you feel cold?" The Brahmin said, "Yes, my lord. I was feeling very cold, but then I looked at the lamps that were glowing in the palace tower. I kept looking at them all night, and that kept me warm." When Akbar heard this, he was very angry. He shouted at the Brahmin, "How dare you? The lamps have kept you warm all night? That is cheating. You shall not get any gold." And he asked the guard to throw the Brahmin out of the court. The poor Brahmin was very upset. He knew that the emperor had been unfair to him, but who could argue with an emperor? Sadly, he went back home. Now, Birbal was present at the court when this happened. He thought, the emperor is being very unfair. I must tell him that so that the Brahmin receive the gold that he deserves. Birbal walked to Akbar and bowed respectfully. He said, Jahapana, I am arranging a party for my friend. I would like to invite you and all the ministers. Please come to my house today evening for dinner. Akbar was very happy to know this. In the evening, he, along with the ministers, reached Birbal's house. But when he saw Birbal in his courtyard, they were very surprised. Birbal was sitting near a small fire, while the pot, which should have been on the fire, was hanging up on a branch of a tree. Akbar asked Birbal, What do you think you are doing? Birbal said, Your Majesty, I am making delicious khichdi for all of us. This made the emperor laugh out loud. Ha ha ha, he said, You fool! How do you think will the heat from the fire reach the khichdi if the pot is hung up so high on the branch? Birbal said, Just the way the heat from the lamps of the palace towers reached the poor Brahmin that day. Akbar stopped laughing. He had realized what Birbal was trying to say. Next day, he called for the Brahmin and gave him the 1,000 gold coins as he had promised. The Brahmin thanked and blessed the emperor. Akbar looked at Birbal as Birbal smiled back. So now this will be the last story of this episode. This is Most Foolish Person. The Emperor Akbar had many hobbies. He liked playing chess and flying kites. He also liked listening to stories of other land. But his favorite hobby was collecting horses, good horses. One day, a horse dealer came to the palace. He had a team of horses to sell. The emperor came out and looked at the horses. They are very fine horses, said Akbar. I will buy them. Have you got any more? No, sir, said the dealer. But if you give me some money, I will go to Afghanistan and buy some more. Akbar gave the horse dealer 200 gold coins for the team of horses and 200 gold coins to bring more horses from Afghanistan. He gave him the money but did not ask him any question. He did not ask what his name was, where he came from, or where he lived. The horse dealer took the money and went away. Many days passed, but the horse dealer did not return. Akbar was growing impatient. A few days later, Akbar asked Birbal to make a list of 10 biggest fools in India. Birbal made the list very quickly and took it to the emperor. As Akbar began to read, he was first surprised, then very angry. Birbal had written Akbar's name at the very top of the list. What is this, Birbal? The emperor shouted. Why is this my name at the top of the list? Jahapana, it is because you are the biggest fool of all people, Birbal uttered. How dare you? Akbar said, being very hurt by Birbal's word. Birbal was calm and continued. Your Majesty, you gave such a large sum of money to a stranger and you didn't ask who he was or where he came from. Isn't that foolish? Akbar said, What if the man returns with the horses? Your Majesty, if he returns with the horses, I will remove your name from the top of the list and write his name there instead, said Birbal. Akbar realized he had indeed been foolish. So with that, I will end today's session. Thank you for listening all the stories. If you like the stories, please go and share it with your friends and families. And every day before going to bed or in any free time, you can listen to these stories or you can watch it in the YouTube. In the YouTube also, you can see the screen, you can see some photos. So it's actually even better if you want to watch it, and or if you want to listen it, it's better to listen it from podcast. And if you want to be part of Creative Thinking Academy, where I read books, where I teach storytelling, where I teach how to write stories, so all those things I teach in the Creative Thinking Academy in a game-based model. If you want to be part of that, please enroll for the free session. The link will be mentioned in the description box. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.